Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Lewis from Recycle Bicycle Sales. Today we're going to talk about how to remove and install your cassette. Some reasons you might want to do this would be you want to clean it thoroughly, you might want to change ratio, you might have a worn out cassette. They're probably the three main reasons that you'd ever want to remove and reinstall a cassette. Step number one will be to remove the rear wheel. Now we've spoken about it in quite a few videos now, but to quickly sum up what you need to do, put it into the smallest cog at the front and smallest cog at the back so we've got the least amount of tension on the chain, and then we want to undo the axle so that we can then remove the rear wheel. Now that we've got the wheel out, let's get our tools ready. You're gonna need to make sure that you have the correct tools for the cassette that you have. Now, SRAM and Shimano tend to use the same tools. There's another brand of Italian components called Campagnolo that sometimes might use a different tool. So make sure you have the right tools for what we're gonna need. This particular example here is a Shimano cassette. So we need to grab the Shimano lock ring tool, which looks just like this, and will slot into the lock ring right there. This is a simple part that you can find at most local bike shops. I happen to have the exact same part, but it's on a pole here. But if you get this tool, you can always just use your adjustable shifter spanner to then pinch on so you can then loosen the lock ring as well. So that's the first tool you'll need. The second one you'll need is a chain whip. The chain whip is simply just a chain on the end of a wrench as well, I suppose. All that's gonna do is hold the cassette still while you undo the lock ring. You'll only need the chain whip when you undo the cassette. You won't need it when you tighten the cassette up, because as you tighten the lock ring, it's going the same way as the drive of the wheel. Now that we're ready to take the cassette off, we're gonna put the wheel down on the floor with the cassette facing away from us. We're gonna get our little lock ring tool, put it in there. We're gonna get our chain whip and our wrench. We're gonna use the wrench in our right hand so we can push down from the right side. The chain whip is simply gonna wrap around one full revolution. We'll put the shifter spanner in there, the wrench, and then we're gonna push down with our right hand with this one here. The reason we do that is it's a normal thread. It's not a reverse thread or anti-clockwise or anything. So the old righty-tighty, lefty-loosey applies here. Now this is a normal thread. It's not a reverse thread or anything like that. It's normal clockwise. So the old righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So we wanna go lefty-loosey, and we want to put it on the wrong way in this video. So we're simply just going to push down really hard and undo that lock ring. And then hopefully now it's easy enough for you to just simply undo with your hand, and then off comes that lovely little lock ring. Now the cassette is ready to fall apart. So now we're gonna take the chain whip off, being very delicate not to throw the cassette onto the floor. And now we're going to press it up against the table here. I like to do that rather than having it resting on here, because we could damage the disc rotor. So we just sort of push our pelvis and pinch the wheel up against the wall like that. And now we've got both our hands free and we're ready to start removing the cassette. Now the cassette is made up of multiple parts, but they're all gonna be able to come off as one nice unit like that. I was saying before that it's made up of multiple different components throughout it as well. Make sure you don't lose any of these parts here. Sometimes you'll find that between two of their cogs, there might be a small little spacer. Remember where that was, and make sure you don't lose it under the table or it rolls into another room. So make sure you keep all the parts together. Another quick thing I might mention here while we're saying that we have multiple components is that some of them are single cogs, but the two that are closest to the inside of the wheel will often come in groups as well. So this one has a group of 3 that are all one item, and this one has a group of 2 that are all one item. Nonetheless, don't lose any of the components. Now in this video here, we're just simply gonna reinstall the same cassette, but you might have removed your cassette so you can change to a larger ratio. As we can see with this one here, the size of the cassette that we've got on there is much smaller than this cassette here. If you're putting a bigger cassette on, you're gonna need to adjust your B tension. We spoke about that in a previous video about how to tune your gears. You might wanna click over there to have a look and understand how to adjust your B tension. Now let's reinstall it. Again, we're gonna grab our wheel and we're gonna pinch it up against the table or the wall again, and we're just gonna go one by one. You'll notice here that there's a whole bunch of different little grooves on the inside of the cassette here, which is gonna push up against what we call the free hub body, this orange part here. One of these grooves looks different. That's our aligning one. So we've got to make sure that we find where the slightly different looking groove is on the free hub body and line up that particular piece with that, and then it should fall down. If we were to line it up slightly differently, it literally just will not go on. as well as that, if it was upside down, same with all of these single pieces, even if we did line up that groove, it still won't be able to drop on. There is only one way that each of these cogs will fit. So make sure you find that large groove so that it can then fall into place. Now we're just putting the cassette back together. When you're putting it back together, it can be a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. Remember that sometimes you've got little spaces between the little cogs on the cassette. Make sure that you put them where they need to be. You can tell if you've accidentally perhaps missed a little spacer, because the gap between each cog here might be a little bit inconsistent between some of them. So make sure that you have the spacers in the correct spot. Now that we've got everything back together in the right position, now we're going to put the lock ring back on. I always say that I like to have a bit of grease on the thread of the lock ring because it's metal touching metal, so I don't want it to seize over time. Then we're all good to go. Now you might have noticed there in the video, I did that with my hand rather than doing it with the tool first. The thread is incredibly fine. If you were to put the tool on it and just tighten it straight up and it wasn't going perfectly straight, it could completely ruin either the free hub body, that orange piece we were looking at, or the lock ring. So I like to just start the thread with my fingers and then really get some proper tension on it with the tool later on. And then we'll grab our tool. Again, I can still tighten it with my hand before I needed to put the other tool back onto it. Now, right near the start of this video, we were saying we only needed the chain whip to loosen the cassette. Now that we're tightening it, we won't need to do it. So instead of having the tool in our right hand, we're gonna move it across to our left hand, grab the tool, the lock ring tool, and then tighten it. Nice and tight, remembering that one day somebody else is eventually gonna have to undo it, so don't push it on with your foot or anything like that. And honestly, guys, that is it. Now we're ready to put it back into the bike, and then we can see if we need to adjust our bead tension, and otherwise we're ready to go. Awesome. So now that we've got the wheel back in, hopefully everything should be working perfectly and you should have a nice clean cassette. If it doesn't seem like it's shifting perfectly, or perhaps you've got a different ratio cassette, you might need to adjust something here to do with the derailleur, most likely the bead tension. You can watch one of our other videos about how to tune your gears to understand what bead tension will do in relation to your cassette. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you've learned something about how to remove and reinstall your cassette. If you've ever tried to do this yourself and perhaps you learned something while you were doing it, let us know in the comments below. Otherwise, it should be a job that you could do at home if you were to grab the right tools. If you didn't want to have to go out and buy the tools, feel free to bring it in here to Recycle Bicycle Sales, and we'd be more than happy to help you remove, reinstall, change ratio, clean, or do anything to do with removing and reinstalling your cassette. Otherwise, I'm going to say thanks for watching, like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. I'll see you in the next video. See you guys.